My name is Julius Caesar. I am a barber of 17 plus years.
I'm Sophie Staygold. For the last 10 years, I've been able to travel the world and share my experiences.
I'm Miguel, also known as the Nomad Barber, a traveling barber, filmmaker and photographer from Liverpool in the UK.
What makes Statement Grooming Goods a very unique project is simply one word: it's disruptive.
When you have three different people with three different mindsets and styles and you put us together in a room and be able to create something from scratch in terms of smells, how it looks, how it feels.
Felt like something new that we could really do for our industry.
We were able to really join this when it was just simply an idea. It was so crazy walking into that room, and it was just like a laboratory, right? There was like all these magazines and little balls of fragrances and mood board things to create on. It was like super overwhelming.
We really put everything into this.
All of us have worked really hard in testing out so many different materials, performance, scents.
What's the packaging? Is there attention to detail?
And we were so particular about how we wanted to look, how we want the labels to sit. We don't want to crease here, we don't want to crease there. All these little challenges is what's kind of made the product range what it is now.
All of us are still working barbers. It's very tried and true.
Because we've all put our minds together and created different types of products, it's not your typical barber range.
We wanted to make sure that everything was at the best quality possible.
It's barber and it's editorial and it's everything in between.
So it's basically for everyone, and that's what we try to represent within the brand campaigns as well, using different people with different hair, different ethnicities, different looks, you know, even different genders. So I think that's what makes our product line special.
To make a statement, that's like almost putting a stamp on something. It's your conviction, it's your commitment, it's what you stand behind.
If I had to describe Statement in 3 words, it would be creative, custom, and strong.
And that's my statement.
That's my statement.
That's my statement.
What's going on, guys, and welcome to our statement grooming segment. My name is Sophie, and I will be taking you guys through a haircut tutorial today. So thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure to check out all of our products at statementgrooming.com, and make sure to stay connected on all of our social medias. We're always doing new things, new styles, and always trying to share more tips and tricks with our products. And you can follow us at Statement Grooming on social media. Make sure to hashtag make your statement and statement, and my personal Instagram is at staygold31. Be sure to stay in this whole thing because we are also doing some product giveaways. We will be doing these little kits, and we're going to be choosing 3 different winners. So the way you want to enter is all you have to do is type in your full name into the text box. We have all your information, and we will pick all the live winners right at the end of this video. And also, guys, as you're doing this class, I want you guys to all feel very comfortable to ask anything that you want. We have you for an hour. Type it in, and we will try our best to get all your questions answered. Inside the Try Me kit is the wax powder, the grooming spray, the shampoo, the shine face, and the hair and body cleanser. If you guys would like to enter that giveaway, please make sure to write that full name in the text box. All right, so what we're doing today, I'll be going over a bald skin taper. We're going to do a step-by-step on that. I'm going to show you guys what products I would use to style. This is going to be your more common haircut that you probably get in the shop. It's kind of like a side part. Sometimes people prefer a natural line. Other times they would like to do a hard part. You have a preference on hard parts or more natural? Cool. So always have to check, right, guys? And so I'm going to show you also how to blend this part out when it comes to certain lengths on the side. So let's start with understanding tools, because without knowing our tools, it makes the process a little bit harder to figure out because the more we know what we're doing, why we're using what we're doing, it allows us to creatively create things that we see in our heads. So the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna send it to the side here. Yeah. So before we get started, we already prepped our model with the STMNT shampoo and conditioner, and I'll talk to you a little bit about the hairline. But why it helps is after you use a conditioner that we have, it helps the hair sit a little bit better versus allowing it to frizz out too crazy. It kind of softens the hair a little bit, so when we are going into the cutting portion, it's a lot smoother. So let me talk a little bit about the all-in-one cleanse that we have. In order to get a nice style, you kind of always want to have a nice clean canvas so that when you style, everything comes out a lot better than having, a mixture of products clashing. So oftentimes when we are dealing with clients in the barbershop or the salon, we want to rinse out any kind of dirt that we have in the hair so that we can make sure we put the new products in, everything will wrap as it's supposed to. So the first thing is our shampoo. Shampoo and conditioner go very well together if you'd like it more separated. Oftentimes there's also a handful of clients that do prefer an all-in-one, and that's something I actually use at home quite a bit. It's everything that you need, just in this one right here. It has a really great smell. You'll like that. It has a little bit of that menthol in the product, so you can feel that little tingle when you are using the conditioner. I also use this as a body wash. It smells really great. And then we have our cleansing bar. If you prefer something more of a solid, you have this cleansing bar. It's really great for traveling as well. It smells great. It has charcoal infused, so it's really great. Also, I use this on my face, and oftentimes in the past, I don't really like to use bar soap because it dries out my skin, but this is something that I can use because it has a really nice lather that really helps me not feel like my skin is cracking. And then last but not least from our care line is our beard oil. Now, if you guys follow me on TikTok or Instagram, I do talk about using this in a lot of my blonde clients. So when we have blonde hair, all our cuticles are usually blown out. So if you're not using some sort of leave-in conditioner, they tend to frizz out a lot. And especially with my guys that have super short blonde hair, they might not always know what to use to help them smooth out that hair. And it could be blonde hair or it could be natural hair that just has just from weather can kind of damage the hair sometimes too, and you get like a lot of split ends. STMNT beard oil is going to help soften the hair, and I use this a lot on my ends. I don't really typically like to use this in my roots, but it also doesn't get super oily, which is also a really great feature of our beard oil. And we did win an award for this not too long ago, so we're super excited that it's such a versatile product that you can use for men and women. So really great, check that one out. And that is pretty much our entire care line. Having that as your base is going to really help you set up everything that you need to do. All right, so let's get into the cut. So on the other side, I've already kind of pre-cut it just to make sure that we had enough time to explain anything. And again, guys, if you have any questions at any point at all in the cut, please leave a thing in the text box and we will have someone read it out for me to answer your guys' questions. All right, so ready to go?
Ready to go.
All right, here we go. So first things first, I've already removed the weight that I needed. So the really cool thing about barbering is that there's multiple ways of doing everything. And that's what's really great about our industry because techniques are always evolving. Every time I've gone to hair shows, I usually pick up a few things every single time of trying something else and adding that to my process, depending on what kind of cut I'm doing. Most of my cuts, I kind of have a certain system that I kind of already follow through, but when it comes to certain creative cuts, that's when we kind of tweak things a little bit. But in this one, we're going to be doing a mid-high skin taper. So we're going to get rid of this arch and we're going to move a little bit higher. I'm going to tell you how I would do that. So let's get a little close up real quick so you guys can see. When I'm doing any kind of measurement on where I'm trying to shape, where I'm going to start, where I'm going to finish, this is kind of my guide. So when I think of tapers, when I think of fades, right, those are the two main like reference points of styles that most people will ask for. You know, it's like a number 2 fade, number 3 fade. You can't always assume that fades are always skin. You know, there's a lot of times people don't actually know that there's different sizes. So I always double check to make sure that, you know, you're starting off with the right base number. So for the tapers, for me, tapers versus fade, it's a reference point. Tapers are a way to create a blend just in the sideburn area and then in the nape area. You still keep this little frame here, the hairline, but when we do a fade, we take all of this out, which removes all of the hairline and you're blending everything up. So when you think about which haircut lasts longer, it's a pro and con depending on how you want to look at it. When you think about fades and you're removing all of that weight, it's going to grow in to the natural hairline. So sometimes it looks like it grows in even faster versus sometimes with tapers, because it has a stronger edge all the way around, it kind of preserves that haircut shape a little bit more so that you can kind of still see the frame. But fades, generally you're trying to remove everything. But also a really great thing with fades and tapers is you're using it to also help blend hair that maybe could look like a pocket, could look like a little dent in the hair, and you're using it as a way to smooth out the entire head, which gives the illusion that the head looks round and it doesn't have all these crazy things that you gotta work with. And that's probably one of the most challenging things about doing really short cuts like this with fades and tapers is to generally work with all the different densities of the hair, all the different textures, and trying to do our best to make everything look completely smooth. So when I'm choosing what type of blend I'm gonna do, how high I'm gonna go, I usually ask the clients low, medium, or high, and if they don't know, I tend to always use photos as a way to show them what that looks like, because sometimes, let's be honest, a lot of clients can't always explain what they want. So if we have a photo, that is something they can quickly identify and help them with versus us trying to figure out and read minds, and then there's just like this miscommunication. You know, consultation is very important. I learned this the hard way because I have done a lot of cuts in the past where I didn't ask all the right questions. So a lot of times I've wasted time doing something that they actually didn't want. So this is a way for us to really cross-check everything that we need before we go into it. So my starting point for tapers are always going to be right where the ear meets the top of that part. Usually it's about right here. And if I do a low taper, this little arc right here generally looks a little darker because people that want low tapers want a higher contrast between the blend. They want to still see all this, but they want to keep that blend on the lower part. Strong arch for low, and then, which is kind of, my guidelines would probably sit right here, right in between that. So the edge of where it would finish would be completely below this arch because I don't want to remove it, right? So we want to keep it darker. So my edge would be like this. This is going to be my low. Now if I want to do a medium taper, same starting point. I'm going to lift it just a little bit more and just barely above this arch here, but not to the point where you're going to ball that out. That's going to be a softer arch right there. And then when you do your high tapers or high fades, that's going to be more similar to your military high tights. You know, they don't want that arch anymore. You're completely removing the hair past that hairline to blend it out completely. So we're going to do it to where we're removing that hairline, that arch right there. We're going to go a little bit higher than that, but not super high. So what I've started with so far, when I was prepping the hair, we took all the hair down to about a 1. That's going to be all along this. And then just to give you an idea of what I had to do, it's a style preference, but I remember when I first started cutting hair, we would take this first initial guide, we take it all the way up here, and we usually keep all hair here. And I think maybe styles have changed over time where a lot of people are dropping their fades a little bit lower to preserve this little weight in this spot. Because oftentimes there are a whole bunch of cowlets that usually happen around this area, and if you cut them too short, you get those little spikies, and it's really hard for them to actually handle those in their own space. And the goal for me to do any kind of haircut properly is to make sure that they can also walk away and do the same style as if they had just left us, right? So all I would do is, instead of taking my guidelines up here like the usual way, the old school way I would say is how I did it, is that now I'm doing the same thing, whatever guide I'm doing, but I'm going to drop underneath the occipital bone kind of area a little bit more, just to give you that nice weight. And also knowing that if you have worked in shops, you know everyone has different head shapes. So he has an occipital bone, it's pretty standard right here, but there's often times where people don't have this little dip at all, and it's completely flat. So we don't want to expose that look. We want to add a little bit more weight in those cases so that it looks like there's like a nice occipital shape down into the neck. It's just going to be a little bit better of a silhouette for them to look their best. Any questions so far? I hope you guys are following.
Very informative, just no questions yet. So if you guys have any questions, go ahead and pop them into the chat, and I will ask them for Sophie.
Thank you. So this is what I've done so far, right? So there's the one, and then this is also another cool thing. When you are working with face, there's a variety of ways that you can go about things. I generally stop with my guard at number 2, because what I can do after that, I can do with my comb and smooth things out a lot faster than doing a 1 to a 2 to a 3 to a 4 to a 5, which you can do. And I would say try both ways until you find one that works for you. But one that has worked for me that's a little faster is being able to just use my 1 on the bottom, still with my 1 guard. I add a comb and I go completely straight up, right? Because I want to make sure that I keep everything squared. I want his haircut to look squared, whether his head rounds in or not in that area. I use the hair to build that shape, and I make sure I keep everything very square all the way across. So you guys can see from the front, the hair here, I could actually round in, but it doesn't complement the head enough, so I'm going to make sure from the widest part of the side of their head, and usually that's kind of what I feel for when I'm going through the beginning of the haircut, is I'm trying to feel for that spot so I know where to blend out. So if it was a little higher up here, then I would use that as a guide and make it stay square there. But I want to find where the widest part of the head is, and I'm going to go straight up from there to create that nice square shape.
All right, we have a question. This is from Carlos. He wants to know, what would you do if you had a pronounced occipital bone, but the back is heavier? He said with meat fat in the back. So, yeah.
Okay, we're talking about the hot dog, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. This is a personal preference. I personally don't dig underneath the rolls. I tend to try to help them hide the rolls, but oftentimes there is people that will just say, I know it's there, let's just expose it, give me that skin fade. In those cases, you just do your best to blend in between the rolls and just try to mask everything. If it's on the lower end, you can probably ball over it and blend, so that way all of this is kind of consistent. But if it's in the middle, it does get a little bit tough. So you kind of have to use your own judgment on those calls, and just seeing where that is. I know for sure if it was on the bottom and they really wanted that skin taper, I would probably ball over it. The same way, if somebody had a super insane occipital bone that was popping out, I would probably do a skin fade over that or completely under, so it hides that area completely. So yeah, use your best judgment on it. It's up to you how deep you want to, chip away at that.
Thank you.
Okay, so here's a little cool thing that I started doing probably years later, once I started to understand and you're building the muscle memory that you need, because it's going to take time. What you do in the beginning of starting and learning how to do face is going to be completely different how you see things in a few years, and that's just muscle memory of knowing what you got to do. Because I used to remember feeling like I would start my skin line and then all of a sudden it just goes higher and higher and higher, like I just can't control where it ends, and it's just like you just gotta guess sometimes. I would start doing cuts that were going too high, even though the clients were asking for like low, medium. I'm like, oh shit, we ended up doing a high and high. I'm sorry, I don't know what to do. So the way I'm able to now control it a lot better is because I did that base, like I told you guys, I did the one clipper comb. I start with that base first. So what that's telling me now is, now I have an endpoint. I know that this is where I need to finish. So from that, so everything after that, it's just blending from here to there. versus starting here and then chasing that line all the way up. Another great thing about doing it this way is I'm cutting it down so I already can see my canvas. If this was already the length that it came in with, which was probably like a 4 or 5, as I'm cutting and starting from the bottom, there's a lot of hair that's kind of hanging over that can get in the way and you might not be able to see. This way, I kind of pre-made my endpoint that I can see exactly how I'm gonna go about it.
Okay, I got a couple more questions. Carlos is back. Thank you, Carlos, for engaging. Also, clients from the back of their head, they have a flat side and then the other side pops out. So it's like an uneven. How would you cut the hair in order to make it look even from the back view?
I look at shades. So when I know what you guys are talking about, because I've definitely had that situation before, I look at the color of the hair. I look at it as gradients, right? If we're trying to get a nice seamless blend, this side that's out more might have to be a little bit longer than this side if it is going in more. You know what I'm saying? So you kind of have to just look at the shade of what you're leaving behind and making sure that looks straight across. Because it's the same way that you have the opposite problem where there's dents in the head. If this is all one and there's a huge dent in the middle, that little space right there is going to be like a half part. So sizing one down because that's going to help the coloring match the rest of this. So look for gradients and try to match it that way. All right, so I'm going to now edge up this little bit here. Now let's punch that in a little. You guys can see, I'm using a zero gap trimmer, guys. You want to have a zero gap trimmer that's adjusted really well because it's going to make the biggest difference when you're doing your edge ups. When I first started cutting hair, I had no idea what that was. I just used whatever I got in my school kit. And so when I finally got into a barbershop, I'm like, how come my lines aren't looking so crisp? It's because my tools just weren't adjusted the way that they were supposed to. So what that means is before I had to press hard, I'm like, maybe if I press harder, you're gonna get that nice clean line. But really all you have to do is zero gap your tools and you'll be able to get a nice clean line.
I know zero gap is always a big top question. We do have one from Nicola. What kind of fade would you choose on the back if you had different hair growing in the back, the different shapes? I think you just covered that. I just want to make sure that we asked the question.
Okay.
Yeah.
In that case, depending, I would judge it on the shape of the head, but if it has a lot of craziness to it, I would probably suggest more of a taper than I would a fade or it has to be a high fade where you're completely going through the whole thing, shaving the whole thing off. But if there's a lot of imperfections, I try to do it maybe more of a taper to help hide it. But if it's so insane, I would just do a high fade and then you can completely remove all of that and make it blend really nice.
Perfect. Zero gap.
Zero gap. All right, so we're gonna follow that natural hairline. I always think about the regrowth. I never go into it. I'm like, okay, let me just get that nice clean V in the back and just give them a nice crisp line. I always try to make sure that I'm keeping close to the natural because I'm always thinking, when this grows out, is it gonna look really horrible? Is it gonna be wearable enough for them? So I see where it is. I see where it's the most dense, and that's gonna be my guide. And I have like the softest pressure because also when you are using zero gap trimmers, they are going to be very sharp. And when you are doing edge ups around somebody's ear or hairline, the last thing you want to do is create a lot of redness. You definitely don't want that. You want to be really careful. And I always do this little part right around here. You guys can't be scared of like holding people's ear down. It's the only way you're going to be able to get around to it. I know it's weird at first, but you'll soon realize that you need to do it. And if anything, you can just ask and just make sure like you feel comfortable and you're not like tugging too hard. Very careful around the ear. I tend to always do a light edge up first so that I can see what I'm doing, and then I would go back in and kind of define it a little bit more. Very close to the hairline. Now see, following the hairline is great, but I need this to look a little bit more of a nice C-scoop. So see, it's got a nice ridge. This is just following the natural. So this is where you actually kind of adjust to make it look even better. Is you look at that from an overview, like kind of a little bit of a distance, and I'm like, this looks too straight, right? And that was following the natural. So I'm just gonna curve it a little bit just to give it a better finish.
Okay, we've got a question from Ray. How do you know where to line it up in the back?
Great question. We are about to get there. But you're gonna follow their natural hairline while looking at the width of their neck. If they have a super wide neck, you're not gonna wanna take those curves all the way in. Let me show you what that looks like. So the natural hairline, I mean, you can kind of see it. His grows pretty thick right around this area. So that's generally where I use my guides for where I want to put it, but also think about the regrowth again, right? That should help guide you. But if he has a super wide neck, you're not going to want to go super angular in. And then he has a super small neck, you're not going to want to go this wide that it almost takes up this whole neckline. So use your best judgment and look at it from the back and just make sure it looks balanced. Like when I look at it, you shouldn't see, oh my God, it just looks so wide or it's too narrow. So kind of find that in between while looking at the frame of what they have. Now, this also, you know, there's going to be special clients that just have hair that grows out almost to the front of their face. So you kind of just have to make sure that you just look at a couple of key things and finding that right measurement of where you want to put it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're going to fix this little arch a little bit more, and you're going to see a difference here. I'm using just the corner of my trimmer, kind of like a little marking pen. It helps me really fine tune what I need by not using the whole blade, but using just the end. And now when you look at it, I only adjusted a little bit, but look how much better that looks. It has a more natural C-scoop versus a straight line, and then a small line, and then a curve. Another thing that changed this part is sometimes it could look like we're doing a nice C-scoop, but because of the way people's bones are in this area, it can change the shift in how it looks when you're standing over here and you're looking at it. It could look like it's not as round as we thought. And that's because of this little bone right here in the back of the ear. So I always look at that spot as well to make sure that the bone that's coming out is not adjusting my curve. Okay, and you have the option of going this way or this way. I like to go underneath because it's just a little bit less rough on the skin. So I'm gonna go upside down and just remove that hair. And save the cleanup for later if I'm using a razor to clean it up or a foil shaver. Same thing with your right above the ear. Don't forget to get all the little hairs that are on the ear. It's super important to get those details. It makes the biggest difference. They might not be able to see it, but it really shows how much you care about it. And I always try to strive for as best and close to perfection as possible, and making sure I don't leave those details not attended to. Okay, so now let's do my first guideline of the skin taper here. All right, so let's see. Okay. Now, if you're new at this, you don't want to put in a hard line, because when you put in a hard line, it's going to be really hard to blend out. So easy in, easy out, right? I'm going to go nice and soft. I see that the natural curve is right on here, so we're going to go just right about that. So I'll start with this, just so I have a guide, and I see the natural curve is there, and we only want to go just barely above it. So turn it upside down. And whatever guideline you start with, you want to follow that guideline up. So some people do straight guidelines like this, some people do curve. It's a style choice that you can choose, or your clients choose. But I went completely straight across, just enough to remove that arch. And then we're going to ball this down a little bit, so we can push that off. And I'm gonna throw my foil shaver in this area to really bring it down. And what the foil shaver does is instead of leaving it at the trimmer stubble that it does, this is going to allow me to make it go completely flush with the cheek. And honestly, it's a good finish, and it helps the haircut last a little longer. And as I move to the line, I'm actually pulling away a little bit, because if you run that blade too close, you're gonna create a hard line that's really hard to blend out.
We've got a question. As to the back taper line of the neck, do you do a straight horizontal line or a bit of a curve? Or does it depend on something? Sorry, as to the back taper line on the neck, do you do a straight horizontal line or a bit of a curve, or does it depend?
Same thing with the side. You guys can choose what you want. I tend to go straight across. I know a lot of people who love to do curve, and the reason for the curve is sometimes it makes the dark edges darker when you're lining stuff up. If I go across, those edges are gonna look a lot softer, like almost non-existent. I'm trying to blend it out. So doing that shape, you have darker edges. It's the only difference. But some people leave the dark edges so that they can see the frame, and then eventually they blend it out. So you can kind of take it two different ways.
Thank you. And then when it comes to the tapers, how far behind the ear does your fade go?
And that depends on what the clients want, what their head shape looks like. Generally, you probably, like if it was just a regular taper that people don't really have a specific direction for, I would probably take my skin line not to the end of, I wouldn't take it to the earlobe, but maybe a more common area would probably be a little bit underneath that. It just depends on where it gets the most dense on the back of the hair. Like if you look here, so it gets pretty light in this area. You look for the dense part. Wherever that dense part is, I need to make sure I go above that if I am doing skin taper, to let that be my guide. Okay, so for my taper here, now we're gonna take it up. Flipper, no guard. And because it's straight, right, I'm gonna follow that same guideline.
Beard Rest says thanks. Beard Rest official. You're welcome. New question, how do you blend in the beard for someone who has a thicker, fuller beard when doing a taper?
That will be completely different than short beards, because you're gonna have to attack that a little different because of the width of those kind of beards. But I generally, for more lumberjack style beard sculpting, it's a lot of freehand work, and it's a lot of understanding how to cut with the right amount of pressures, because you gotta keep in mind when you are dealing with someone that has a fuller beard, they have a lot of curls in their hair. So if you take off too much, you can actually create a hole. So something you definitely wanna do first is to smooth out the beard and try to straighten it out so you can actually see its true form and length, and then cut according to. Right, so now that we have my first skin line there, it's next. Now I move up into my half guard. I'm gonna do the exact same thing, because remember, we already know where we wanna end up. Now we're just trying to catch up from here to there. Following again, once again, my same guideline shape, that straight line all the way across. And as I move up, you can kind of see the guideline get a little lighter, right? All right, same exact thing. Now I'm in my one guard. So now it should start connecting. So that's kind of the base that we started with. Now I have it on the tilt. This is a corner cutting. Corner cutting allows you to also pinpoint where you want to do it versus using that whole entire blade to the head. I'm only cutting on the corner because I want to make sure I'm pinpointing exactly where I need it. It's almost similar to point cutting with scissors. Like, you guys know that feeling of going in and doing this? I mean, some people do it this way. You're doing the same thing by tilting the clipper on a corner and point cutting that way. Because you're just trying to lighten the shade and connect the blend. And usually once I have my base complete, I go usually back in to refine anything that stands out for me. So like I said, are everything, and I try my best to make sure I get everything, looking at the different angles. That's something you definitely want to do when you are working with the same shade, is you need to, like, that's going to be about, like, if you ask me, barber, that's like almost like 75–80% of how your haircut results will look like. If it's too dark, you simply just can't see the shadows and depth that you're creating on the cut. To have too much light, you don't have enough shadows to work with your cut. So you want to have a nice balance of lighting when you are working with this type of cut. Once I have my base, I go back in to refine anything. Got my clipper here open, no guard. And usually this is where all the growth patterns and specific things you gotta do start to happen, like right here. Everything's the same length, but there's a couple areas that are darker, and that's just because the density is just a little bit different. So I go back in and fine tune specifically that part. I have it on the edge. And I just kind of chip away at it a little bit. I stop, I look at it, go at it a little bit more. Until I find a nice gradient that I'm happy with. I mean, you can fine tune for actually a really long time. There's times where I would be working on the same spot over and over, and sometimes what happens is if you stare at one place for too long, you kind of get like hypnotized by certain spots, and you kind of almost like drive yourself crazy because you can't see what you're trying to do, or you're trying to fix it, and you're not making it worse. So if that ever happens to you, just move to a different part, and then you can go back to it kind of in a different mindset.
Angie says, Sophie, you are so amazing. Thank you for sharing your trade secrets with us. So excited to watch you work. Thank you, Angie.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And then Darlene says, loving all the tips. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Darlene. All right, so let's move on to this area here. This is where it gets a little tricky because this is where the head starts to round in, so it gets a little darker sometimes, just in different places. And then hairline densities also change. So another cool trick of similar use of like what's it called? Point cutting with your clippers. I'm going to do a little session here with my texturizing shears. So I'm going to just softly chip away at this a little bit because I want to lighten that up. And if you can't see the shadows that your haircuts are leaving, the best thing you can do is to pull out your iPhone and take a picture, because your iPhone, I'm not gonna lie, it's a pretty raw photo, and it hurts sometimes to see the things that you leave behind that you might not have seen with your eyes, but it actually teaches you to kind of find them in real time after some time. It's a great way to learn. It's something I did a lot of. I took a lot of pictures of my work so that I could see what was happening, and also to watch my progression grow on each repeat customer. You know, every time I saw them, I'm like, okay, what can I do better the next time? You know, and you're able to actually save those as like a personal file so that you can see where you can improve on. You can't improve what you don't notice. So I'm pretty hard critic on myself, so I always look for things that I can make better. And it helps me kind of like keep an open mind to seeing the things that I don't always notice. So I'm still keeping my square shape, but as I'm moving my comb up, it's still in a square shape, right? I'm not rounding in, I want to keep everything completely up. So it's like I'm scooping and making sure it stays straight up. I want to soften that blend as much as I can. And honestly, sometimes it's just that one strand that makes the difference of connecting it really nicely.
Sophie, Beard Rest Official wants to know what brand of scissors do you use?
I use all this Tani brand, the Japanese brand. I love all of the stuff that they have. All the texturizers are really great, different sizes. And they're comfortable, that's the main thing. I have small hands, so I don't like using the little rubber fillers. So this has a nice feeling every time I use them, or any of their tools actually. Little by little, you guys can kind of see the softness start to happen. It's like it's still dark here where we wanted to keep that way, but now you're seeing that softer transition all the way down. And how I would go about the taper here, you're pretty much going to go in reverse once you get to the beard section. And I'm actually not even cutting to the base. I'm just lightly getting the tips of the hair. You know, my goal isn't to remove a lot of hair. My goal is to soften my shades. Like I said, with refining, I could be here all day doing this because I just can't help myself but see things at different points of the haircut. So once I feel a little flustered, I move on to the next place. So let's move into the back. Now, looking for the most dense area, right? And also looking at the occipital, making sure we know the distance between everything, and just kind of feeling it out, looking at it from the side, so you kind of know the shape that you are creating.
Mikola wants to know, how much time do you spend doing a haircut for each customer about?
When I first started, I was probably doing 15, 30 minutes, 45. I currently do 2 hours. 2 hours, not gonna lie. But there's people out there that like that, and that's what's great. Is not everybody wants to sit for that long, but there's certain people that look for specifics that don't mind it. It's like if I go get my hair colored, I'm not gonna care if it takes 3 hours one day or 5 hours the next day, as long as I know it comes out exactly how I want it. Alright, so first guideline, dense area all the way across, right? We're going to change probably about here. Now, very lightly am I doing this because sometimes even when you think you're going light, it could leave a red line. And my goal every time is to make sure that I don't leave a red line. And that's just because sometimes certain skin are super sensitive.
Lealoha says that she loves how Sophie explains everything. Definitely reading well on the other end.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate that. That is something I've worked on for a very long time. So it's nice to hear that kind of thing. Thank you. I always remember when I first started teaching that if my grandma can't explain it, I'm not doing it as in depth. So I try my best to break everything down in a way that's easy to understand and easy to follow. So as you guys can see here, I'm going through the same process as I did on the side, just now on the back. try my best to make sure I'm creating even guidelines as I move up. And once I feel like I have it, I'm going to follow the same exact steps, but with my next guard going up, which is going to be my 0.5. And probably the most important guards for me, and for a lot of people that do like to use the guard system completely all the way through, it's going to be your 0.5, your 1, your 1.5, and 2 guards.
You touched on this earlier, but Ray wanted to know, how do you gauge how high to go on a taper, low, medium, high? And I know you touched on that a little bit, but can you go through that again? How do you gauge that, how high to go?
I'll show you what I think about when I'm choosing. It depends first on the length of their neckline. Like if they have a super long neckline, it can shift a little bit, and depending on what they're coming in with. That would be the first thing I would look for. Secondly, it's usually the measure of where you put your skin line. So this is going to be in more of the lower mid. Like if I were to do a high skin taper, I would probably take my skin line closer to the bottom of the earlobe and blend up from there. So medium and low are going to be a little bit, probably closer to, I would say, I wouldn't say it's the same for everybody where the earlobe is, because remember, earlobes are different length on different people. But to give you an idea of what I would do in this situation, my high skin would have been over here. And it looks crazy high sometimes, but actually when you blend it out completely, it actually doesn't look as bad once you blend it all the way up to the top. Alright, so now that we finished the half guard, same situation, we're going to do the same thing with our 1 guard. And this should start connecting it to our initial base length. And because now I'm working on the wider part of the head, I can work with the blade completely flat to the head, while keeping in mind where the bones are, where anything dips. You know, you always want to still make sure that my pressure is still pretty light. I mean, it's pretty much light throughout most of it. People always tell me I usually cut with a very light hand. And also, because of that, I think it's a little bit easier to blend out certain things because they're not putting in a bunch of hard lines.
Ray says he's always scared of going too high, and thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Trust me, I've actually thought that too. Like, this looks too high, and so I completely blended it out. I saw that it actually brought the blend lower if you blend it out correctly, going all the way up. So you can actually take it pretty high, and I've actually attempted to do it on certain people just to see it, but I remember that feeling. I'm like, oh my god, I think I'm going too high. But once you fully blend it out, it won't look that way. So now this is my refining time. I'm going back in, getting corners. Corners are definitely hard once you start cutting kids. Kids come with a bunch of different dents in the back of their neck sometimes, so those can be challenging. but they'll teach you a lot. So if you get a chance to do them, I highly suggest you try so that you can understand it. There's no teacher like real life experiences that you'll get in a shop. And that was one of the things that really helped me when I first started doing super tight phases. I would take any type of client that would come in to give me a chance to understand a different head shape, a different hair texture, a different density, crazy growth patterns. Like someone mentioned earlier, just like different head shapes. So I know we are approaching the end of this segment. So if you guys want to get in on that giveaway, again, we're picking 3 winners to get our Try Me kits here. Comes with a little sampler of all of our favorite items. So all you gotta do is enter your full name into the chat box so we have your information, and I'll pick a live winners at the end of this.
Beard Rest official, do you always do tapers upwards, or you do you use a descending technique as well?
Tapers outward, same, what do you mean?
Do you always do tapers upwards, or do you?
Oh,
yeah.
If it's a skin taper, I always go upwards. Blending downward only works from what I've tried, when it's not skin, because then it's easier to do a 3-2-1. But if I'm doing a 3-2-1 going into all of this, you're gonna get really lost. So tackling it from the hardest part first and making sure you're getting those nice, crisp guidelines connected makes a way bigger difference by doing it that way. But there is ways. There's always a way, right? There's always multiple ways. Is that some people I know do it in blocks, so they'll do maybe not blend all the way down, but it's kind of like what I did before. Took the hair down, then went back up, and then going back down. So you can actually change and shift different techniques. But as far as blending out the skin, I usually do it from the bottom up.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. So there's a slight little dip right here in the middle. That's kind of what I'm working on. And I'm working just on that section alone. I was at my 1 guard, and now I've realized it's not cutting as much, it's still looking dark. So I'm gonna tackle that in and go in with my half. So now I'm sizing down from that area. This whole area is a 1. Now I'm sizing down just in that spot so I can get the same color gradient as the hair next to it. So that when it is completely blended, you won't be able to tell that there's a dip right there. And that's kind of the fun and challenging part about barbering, is trying to fix the imperfections and make it look better.
It looks great.
Thank you. So as I chip away even more at it, it lightens up, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I'll probably finish the rest of that, but just so I can show you guys what I'm gonna do to the rest of this top. Now with speaking of grooming, one of the things we like to highlight is the ability to cocktail all products. It makes it really nice because think about it. You're dealing with a bunch of different types of clients with different kind of hair. So each client might not need the same kind of mix of products. Some might just need 1, others might need 2, depending on what you're working with. So first things first is we're gonna add a little bit of, let's see. We'll add a little bit of powder, I would say, for this little front piece. So we get a little volume in there. What I'm trying to do is just flatten this out so all the hair is not going all sorts of different directions. Just as like a light little base. cool thing you guys can do is spray a little grooming spray. I just use a little bit sometimes, just as a little primer for the hair. So when you are blow drying, it actually helps kind of pre-mold, kind of like what you're trying to go for. Kind of holds it in place without feeling like a super hard helmet. I'm going to throw in a little powder in the front so you get a little lift. So I've got my statement wax powder here. Just a little. Give it a nice little lift, little texture base. It's going to allow it to have some grip. So when I do apply another product on top of this, it's going to connect really well. Now already, it's just in the front, but you guys can already see that little texture right there. And we are going to add a little bit of shine paste. One really cool feature, guys, is all of our products come with a foil seal. This is already open, but everything comes fresh in foil.
Oh, there you go, sorry.
I got okay. You can see you guys are playing with all that glitter. Okay. I love showing people that. But hey, we're going to be using a little bit of shine paste, a little bit nice little soft product here from Julius's line. I love the way it smells. If you guys haven't had a chance to use it, make sure to check it out. And look at this. This is barely a dab. I'm not using too much. We just want to add a little movement to it, but not enough to where it's going to be held super tight. You kind of like a little bit more of a natural finish, kind of like a little, less of it looking like he actually tried. It's just more of a natural shape to it. So you guys can kind of see already there. It sits, it separates, and it's got a nice hold to it that it still can be sat in place how you want it.
When did you, we've got 3 questions going on here, and we're wrapping up, so we'll be doing the drawing shortly. When and what pushed you to the idea to become a barber?
That's a long story.
Yeah, I know.
But to give you the quick version, honestly, guys, I needed a break from academics, and I decided to pursue a more creative career. It happened by chance. A friend of mine had me cut her hair with paper cutting shears. I was just dusting her ends off, and by the end of that cut, she was like, you should go to hair school. Like, my hair came out good, like, I thought nothing of it. I was like, I barely cut your ends, which I feel like anybody could have done. So I got into it. I loved it right away because of being creative and, being able to have like crazy colored hair. I remember working a bunch of retail jobs that I hated because they were so strict on dress code, tattoos, piercings, and, at that time I was just looking for a different way to express myself. I think I was still trying to find out who I was. So barbering really helped me unlock everything, and that's kind of how it is.
Mandy wants to know, when you're working around the temples with clients that are starting to gray, it can make the fade appear uneven. How do you overcome this besides suggesting a high fade?
I would create more density with the hair and use the hair as a way to create the shape. So if we take off too much, you kind of push the hair back. So I use the hair to create the shape to make it look fuller, whether it's gray or whatever color it is. Because salt and pepper hair is actually a lot harder to blend because of those different shades.
Perfect. And then what's the longest length of hair that you're still able to use the powder on?
My hair length, actually, you can use it on any hair length. It's just a great base or a wax. If you think of like wax products, The powder is actually transformative, so when you put the powder in hand, and I want to specifically separate certain parts of the hair, I can do that. Put the powder in here, rub it in, it turns actually to a liquid. From there, I can kind of pinpoint, okay, I want this part to be a little more peachy, and you can do it that way, or scrape it to the base and work it in right where you need it. Okay, so we're going to do the giveaway now. So I hope you guys enjoyed that little segment. So let me just finish this off really quick. You guys can play around with this. I like it when hair looks a little frailed out here. Sometimes I think it has a nice little texture depending on how their hair usually sits. It's kind of the way I would judge how the hair should sit. You guys can see it from the side. At least you guys can see the silhouette. You guys can see the silhouette of how that looks. Right here is usually the part where I'm like, to wear it forward, to wear it back. It's just little details that I think make the haircut look a little different, so people can feel like they have a customized cut specifically for that person. All right, so let's start with the first name. Okay. So hopefully you guys entered your name in time so that you guys can try out this awesome one.
Oh, Miguel's here.
Oh, hey Miguel, that's good.
You're his favorite barber.
All right, first winner, Riley. Riley, I don't want to butcher your last name, Hour. Hopefully I got that right. The first one.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. For any of the winners, please watch the contact ticker at the bottom. It'll give you the information on how to get connected with us so that you can receive your gift. All right, the second one is Mikola Blawaki. Hopefully I sort of said that right. Congratulations, that's number 2. And last but not least, Shauna Riviera. Congrats. Congrats, you guys, and I'm glad you guys stayed on. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to follow all of us on Statement Grooming on Instagram. Follow me at Stable31. I have a YouTube channel as well. It's the same name, and I'm also launching something pretty soon for you guys, so stay tuned. And thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate it always.
Awesome. Thank you.